It's Wednesday, golf fans. That means we've got ourselves another live stream. And this week, the AT&T Byron, a little appetizer, a little starter before the main course next week, which of course is going to be that PGA Championship at what is going to be a beast of a golf course in Oak Hill. But can't get too far ahead of ourselves here. Maybe we'll talk a little bit later about some of my favorites for that track. But we've got ourselves the Byron Nelson and a few edges to be had when it comes to your main slate contest. We've got the game theory side, which I see a massive edge up top. And then past that, you also have a weather edge, which I think is going to play a huge factor on this event. So a few things to go through, and what's shaping up right now to be one of the slates I want more exposure to compared to most. When you've got the weather edge, that game theory edge at play, could make for a really good week if we get things to roll our direction. So I can see a few of you down there in chat. We got JGA talking props. I love it. Already talking about unders for the AM and then overs for the PM. I'm right there with you, right? The weather is going to be massively different between the two waves. Love the way you're thinking, but welcome on in. We've got Mark down there says, hey, Lucas, what'd it be? We're doing pretty well. I've got a coffee here, actually. I'm all souped up on caffeine. I've been getting shit done all day, but had a little afternoon nap, so needed the coffee to kind of bring the energy levels back up. And I'd say that we did a good job doing so. So let's go ahead and get this thing rocking. So let's just dive right on it. So we'll share the golf course. We'll look at some of the metrics from last year. In case you're not familiar with TPC Craig Ranch, which needs to be renamed to the house that KH Lee built, KH Lee Stadium course, whatever we need to call it at this point, because guys absolutely killed it here. And it's one of the easier tracks that we're going to see all year. First 2 times we saw this course, so it's only been at TPC Craig Ranch for 2 years. We had a winning score of 26 under par, and then the year before that, 28 under par, which 2 years ago was the easiest course on all the PGA Tour, at least in terms of actual winning score. And then this year, I actually say there in 2022, I believe it was like top 5 in terms of easiest golf courses. So plays right around 2.75 under par. It's worth noting that it will be a par 71 this year as opposed to a par 72, but you're still looking at a tracker. It's real easy to score. You've got a bunch of drivable par 4s, just 3 of them, in fact. Only 3 par 5s this time around. But even the longer holes that are 470 to 480 yards, you're going to see a lot of birdies made on them. You're going to have receptive greens because of some of the weather we're going to go through over here. And much like the first 2 years, I think something at least 20 under par wins, if not closer to maybe 22 or even 23 under, which you may kind of push back on, saying that it's going to be at least 4 strokes harder. But with receptive greens, these guys are just going to play target practice even on those longer par 4s. So I think you're going to see those top-end players shine. We have a strong enough field this time around that they're still going to take this place low. But let's hop right into the weather because, I talked about there being an edge before, and a lot of it has to do with the weather this week. So earlier on today, they had severe thunderstorms in the area. They had thunderstorms Monday and Tuesday in McKinney, Texas. And throughout the weekend, you're going to have little pockets come through as well. So there is the opportunity for, delays at some point there. I'd say a little bit more likely on Saturday than anything is what I'm seeing at this point. But you're going to have really soft greens. So tomorrow when we have next to no wind, even in the afternoon when it's getting a little bit more blustery, I think these guys are going to take the play super low. On Friday, you can see they're not really calling for precipitation at this point. Earlier in the week, it was supposed to be a downpour all 4 days. So I'd say these first 2 days where it's just going to be a little bit cloudy are probably going to be your best scoring days. Because if you look at Saturday and Sunday, there are storms that are supposed to come through. It'll still be a little bit windy, but if they have to play through any sort of rain, that could throw them a slight curveball. But if they end up just, suspending play, right? Let's say there's thunderstorms that are coming through. They're going to go out there afterwards and tear this place apart. So I think the weather, if anything, is going to help these players out there. And over the weekend could get a little bit annoying when it comes to some of the delays. But nothing that we're not used to at this point, right? We've had a really weird season when it comes to the weather situations. Speaking of wind and weather, in situations when it comes to PGA DFS, well, we've got ourselves one, especially if you're trying to look for an advantage. Typically, I'm somebody that tries to kind of minimize, some of these weather edges. A lot of times I'll take them into consideration, but I won't stack my whole pool in one direction or the other. Well, it's shaping up to be a situation where I played a little bit more than most, right? Where maybe just instead of breaking ties like I typically do week to week, maybe I start to stack lineups, because you can see Thursday morning, right, tomorrow, they're calling for next to no wind for the first 4 or 5 hours of play. And then in the afternoon, it's not like it kicks up to impossible levels, but it's in the 10 to 15 mile an hour sustained range. And it's, right around 20 to 22 miles an hour of wind gusts, which is substantial, right? That's going to impact play. And these guys that are going out there early, I mean, they're probably going to shoot 3.5 under par, right? Even with the change to a par 4 instead of a par 5 this time around. So maybe it's 3 under par, right? The scoring average, something like that. But either way, they're going to tear this place up. And in the afternoon, where it gets a little bit dicey in terms of that weather, it'll be probably a shot harder, maybe even a shot and a half difference. Who knows, right? Texas winds are extremely unpredictable. But either way, you're going to see more than your typical edge tomorrow, right? The guys in the morning are definitely going to get the better side of the situation. But now let's look at Friday, right? And we're going to look at multiple wind sites here. So we're not just going to look at Windfinder, but in the morning, they're calling for pretty substantial sustained winds, right? 12 to 15 miles an hour, right? That's a lot more beefy than what you had for Thursday morning. And the wind gusts are 28 to 30 miles an hour. Now, it's worth noting that this is Windfinder, which is one of the least reliable sources, I would say, especially like 2-3 days out. So I don't know how much we want to look into this super forecast over here, but the main point is, and we're going to look at another site to confirm this here in a second, is that it's pretty flat on Friday, right? If anything, the wind gusts are worse in the morning. So the guys that are going off tomorrow afternoon that have to wake up on Friday morning and play in those windy conditions are kind of getting screwed, right? It looks like they're just getting the short end of the stick, and they're going to be dealing with a lot harder conditions than the other wave. And if that's the case, maybe it's a shot and a half difference there on Thursday. Maybe it's an even day on Friday, right? Obviously, they're going to be more receptive greaves in the morning. They're going to have that advantage over the PM. But because they're in gustier conditions, maybe there is no advantage for the morning guys on Friday. So all of the advantages over here on Thursday. That's what I'm seeing right now. And if we go over here to Willy Weather, right, another site that specializes in the wind, we'll see that they're calling for the same thing. On Thursday morning, you have winds 3 miles an hour at 8 a.m., right? That's perfect conditions, right? They're teeing off at 6:50 local time. So they'll be teeing off actually when it's only 3.4 mile an hour winds. Now it kicks up steadily throughout the day. You can see right around midday, it's right around 10 miles an hour. But by the afternoon, right, when the last guys are teeing off in the PM wave, it's up to 14 miles an hour of sustained winds. And on here on Willy Weather, these are all sustained winds. They're not going to be wind gust numbers. You look over here on Friday, it's flat, right? Much like what you saw on Windfinder, it's pretty flat, right? In the morning, 13, 14 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour. It skipped back on me there. But by the afternoon, you can see it starts to dwindle down a little bit, right? It peaks right around midday, right? Towards the end of the AM wave. These guys are going to be in some 16 mile an hour winds, which is pretty nasty. And then the beginning of the PM wave, right? It'll be in that same sort of wind, but then it dies down right to where it was in the morning. So much like Windfinder, they have it extremely flat on Friday, but a distinct advantage tomorrow. So if we can get players based on what I'm looking at here, right? I can go off here tomorrow morning, right? Say 7 a.m. local time is right around the first tee time with just 4 or 5 mile an hour winds and get off to a really hot start. I like their chances to make the cut, right? Now, I'm not saying that these guys are going to win the golf tournament. They're going to have a 5-shot advantage going into the weekend, right? You have to only take AM guys. But if you're talking about value plays down low, like why wouldn't you take these perfect conditions, right? Just try and get your guys off to a really good start. So my exposure from $8,000 and below is, I think in the exception of 2 cases, all AM, PM guys, right? Guys that are going to be going off early tomorrow and then that late wave there on Friday. So it's an aggressive stance, I know, but based on all of the weather trends I've been looking at, I've looked at, multiple extra wind sites at this point. They're all calling for a huge advantage tomorrow. And then on Friday, it looks really flat. Like, I know it's not the double-edged sword, right, where the AM wave is going to have the good conditions Thursday and Friday, but 5 miles an hour compared to 15 miles an hour of sustained winds is a drastic difference, right? Again, I don't know if I can put a prediction on what I think the split will be, but I think at least a shot difference, I think is comfortable to say between the 2 waves, which is definitely something that I plan on playing. So up top, a lot of the guys I'm just adding to my pool are going to be players that are in that AM wave. And really the only guys I'm playing out of that PM wave are guys that are already in my core. right? Like a Siwoo Kim, a Taylor Montgomery, for example, who unfortunately, right, are getting the short end of the stick when it comes to their conditions. But if anyone's going to make up for that, it's these guys up top, right? It's the best players in the world that can make up for, starting one shot behind if that ends up being the edge. Let's catch up on chat. I know that was a lot there, but wanted to go over that edge. That was edge number one. Edge number two, we're going to talk about here in a second, is from the game theory angle, which we'll get to in a second. What's going on, Barry? Says, what's going on, Luke? Let's fucking go. I agree. Should be a good week. Let's go. Mark says, Taylor Montgomery won here in 2019. It's good to know. I liked him already. I like him even more now, Mark. Good little nugget there for us. Ginny says, those live golfers are going to play for next week. Yeah, there's a few of them in the field. Taylor Gooch not playing, by the way, is an atrocity. The guy's won 2 live events in a row. He's going for a 3-peat here in Tulsa. If he ends up winning in Tulsa, the PGA Championship absolutely has to figure out a way to get him into the field. I mean, it would be crazy to me. What's going on, Marco? Hope you're doing well. A little while since you joined the stream. I'm trying to access the Discord. Yeah, I'll message you that on Patreon. I'll do that later on, man. We're streaming right now. What's going on, Kevin? What do you think about Jimmy Walker and his long iron play? I've looked at the long iron stats for him, Kevin. They're not great, right? The off the tee stats are not great for Jimmy Walker. All of his recent play has been gains around the green where he's been gaining like 3-4 strokes per event, and then decent putter, right? Like gaining 3-4 strokes with the putter, which is solid on a hard golf course, but at a birdie fest, you need the players that can throw those darts. And unfortunately, he hasn't really been doing that. I know with his 175 to 200, he was like outside the top 100 on tour. I know most of the ranges over 200, he was also outside the top 100. So yeah, I wish the advanced analytics were a little bit better on him, Kevin, or else I would probably be there. But yeah, not there personally. What do you think of Joseph Bramlett? I wish he had an AMT time. That's what I'm wishing about Brammy. I was on him before I saw the edge. Honestly, until this morning, I was on Joseph Bramlett. I like the way that he's playing. So if just to inform everyone out there, get everyone on the same page, it's not just been the off the tee play for him of late. He's been really good on approach, and around the green, he's usually a solid player, but gaining half a stroke per round. So tee to green, right, gaining a stroke and a half per round. That's going to lead to some really consistent results. So yeah, I think in cash, he's an exceptional play because when you have somebody that's that stout from tee to green, it just gives them such a high floor. So I like them more from that angle than I do for GPPs. Not asking me, Mark, I know, but his stats are fantastic across the board. Yeah, I agree. Seabez, 801. Yeah, we'll talk about Seabez. Seabez, I think, is getting a little bit of late steam. So we'll talk about him a little bit later. I'm still playing him, just for the record. I like the early tee time. I like the fact that he's playing really good golf, right? He's number 6 in the field when it comes to shots gained, which when I saw that, I thought it was a mistake. I was like, Seabez, how could he be number 6 in the field in recent form? Like, this guy's done nothing. Then you look at his track record, it's like top 25 after top 25. He's killing you with that consistency. So I'm there with you, but we'll talk about him a little bit more later in detail. We got to talk about Scottie here in a second. Give your best 4 out of 6 single entry. Yeah, we'll do that later. So when we go through the lineup building process, we'll do one lineup together when it comes to the GPP lineups. What do you think about Champ on this course? Probably not the best course fit, but I'm playing him. He's got a lot of upside, and he's been really good on approach of late with those long irons. And for the season, I believe he's top 25 in most of those long iron ranges. So I like the course fit. Aaron Baddeley, I like it. We have Seabez as well. Yeah, I've gotten a lot of questions about Seabez. Yeah, we're going to talk about him in a second. I think he's going to be really chalky compared to like ownership projections. Like, I think he might be double the ownership of what most people are expecting. So just, yeah, we'll talk about that later. Let's catch up on chat here in a second. We have a few things to cover on here ownership-wise. So the second edge comes with Scottie Scheffler. And I've thought long and hard about it. The fact that he's in the PM wave, the fact that he's been a piss-poor putter of late. I don't know if I could recommend playing Scottie. I know earlier I said, oh, I could see locking him in all of your lineups. I honestly can't. The more and more I think about it at this sort of birdie fest, he doesn't have the same kind of win equity that he would at a major championship. So let's say this was a really difficult course, right? Where tee to green play was the name of the game. You have to be really good from tee to green. I love Scottie Scheffler, right? And this week of a field, he would absolutely wipe them, right? That percentage of the time to actually play him in all of your lineups or to bet him at such a low outright number. But at a birdie fest, where a lot of it is about putting, our number one correlated stat this week, not number one in my model, right? Because I hate putting putting at number one. But if you look at the correlation data, number one stats shots gained putting. and he is not a good bent grass putter. So to me, it's a straight up fade. Like I can't see the reason for being like, okay, I'm just going to lock him this week, right? When you have all of these guys down to 9K and like they're not the, world stoppers, right? But you can play 4 of them instead of playing Scottie Scheffler, at least 3 of them instead of playing Scottie Scheffler and get over double the field. So if you had a 4-person group, right, and you were getting even odds between the 3 and then Scottie Scheffler, who would you pick? It's pretty straightforward, right? In the head-to-head matchup, you would pick the 3 versus the 1. It's not even close. So when you look at it that way, that's how I'm determining my pull up top. Love Hatton, I love Hideki Matsuyama, and I love Tom Kim. I'm playing all of them except for Scottie Scheffler, right? And if you want to play Scottie this week, you truly would have to fade all of these guys. Like unless you're just being so top heavy, right? Where you're trying to jam in these 2 guys, and then you're down to like $6,500 remaining per spot in your lineup. It's just not feasible, right? So if you're playing them and you're locking them, which you kind of have to do at 44% ownership, you'd have to completely avoid this range. So my recommendation, and it could go horribly, right? Scottie's clearly the best player in this field, is to fade him and play the game theory approach. Take the scattershot approach, especially if you're playing a lot of lineups, because if it goes well this week, you have this weather edge in our back pocket, right? This AM PM wave, which is going to be so much more advantageous. That's how you get a really profitable week, right? It's how you give yourself a few chances to win a GPP if things go out there and shake out your way. So for me, if Scottie busts this week and this AM PM wave is as advantageous as I think it's going to be, it's going to be a really good week for me in DFS. And that's all I'm betting on, right? And essentially my entire player pool just follows suit with that. There's course fits that I'm taking, right? Siwoo Kim, I'm still playing in the PM wave because I like him so much at this course. Taylor Montgomery, he's a past champion on the KFT here, apparently, which is even better for his case here. So yeah, there are exceptions, I guess, to the rule, but a solid 90% of my player pool follows the AM PM wave stack. So that's what I wanted to touch on up top. Again, you can play Scottie if you want. I just think from the game theory approach that, even if he hits, right, you hit Scottie Scheffler at 50% ownership in your lineups, you're playing against half the field with your other 5 spots. Like, you really haven't accomplished anything, right? You've boxed out that half of the field, right? But now you have to go out there and kill it with your other spots. Whereas if he, doesn't go out there and succeed, let's say he finishes like 10th this week, which wouldn't be enough at his price tag, you have all of these guys that are trying to beat him, right? And you have a more balanced lineup. You have a lot more salary in the 8K range and 7K range to work with to build stronger lineups. It's just, I think it's the proper move this week, especially from the game theory perspective. So that's why I'm doing it. All right, let's catch up on chat now that I went through that. Had to get the Scottie stuff out there. If you had to pick a golfer that you think would be in the optimal lineup and has to be from 9K or less, you like Michael Kim. I do too. I don't think he'd be my number 1 pick for that, but I tend to agree with you there. Let's see. Just from pure optimal percentage under 9K. I think that's tough. I think there's a severe drop-off after 9K. If the cop-out answer, I guess, would be a Taylor Montgomery, but I'm really liking Adam Hadwin this week. I think that he's going to get squeezed in terms of ownership, right? Jaeger's right above him. He's like 17% owned. Jean Bezain, he's getting a lot of late steam that I was talking about there, and I'm getting so many questions about him that I feel like he's going to be chalky. Adam Hadwin, single-digit owned Adam Hadwin might be the best play on the slate. And from like a hit rate perspective, he's extremely consistent, right? He's got a very high floor, so I think it helps that too. Thoughts on Michael Kim and Sam Stevens? Sam Stevens looks a little chalky. Got a few people talking him up, so I think he'll get some ownership. He's in the PM wave, which I don't love. On the other hand, who was the other one you brought up? Good old Michael Kim. Love him. He's actually, I mentioned earlier today in my Discord that I thought he might be the best play on the slate here in the 7K range. He's got good recent form. He loves bent grass. He's first off in the AM wave, or he's in the wave that we're looking for, and he's way cheaper than he should be. So yeah, I'm all in on Michael Kim. He's going to be one of my higher owned plays here in the 7K range, but kind of like a Sam Stevens, kind of like, let's see, who else is getting steamed up in the 7K range? Eric Cole, Dylan Wu, both going to be really chalky here in the 7K range. You're not going to be alone in playing a Michael Kim. I have to say, outside of those really chalky pieces, though, you're going to have some really low-owned guys in the 7K range. Like Luke List, Mackenzie Hughes, no one's going to play them. No one's going to play Patton Kizzire, a Matthew Neesmith, No one's going to play Robbie Sheldon down there. What is going on with the formatting on this? I don't know if you guys can see that on the stream. It's really bugging out. And now it's posting more of that. Oh my goodness. All right, there we go. I don't know what's going on with my Excel out here. It was tripping out a little bit. Either way, though, there's a lot of guys that are really low owned here in this 7K range because there's a good amount of chalk. So for me, I'm avoiding most of the chalk. There's a few that I'm taking, like Michael Kim would be one of the pieces of chalk that I'm willing to eat. But yeah, it also makes a lot of plays in that 7K range really good for GPPs. Like most notably, some of those plays that I just pointed out. Bruce says, is Gsluke really going to be one of the lower owned 9Ks? If not, where do you see him landing? I think he's like average owned per my ownership projections. Like he's lower owned than a Day and a Kim for sure. He's higher owned than an Adam Scott. I can tell you that much. I'm not going to give you the exact number, right? Because it's on my Patreon page. But yeah, he's like in the middle of the pack when it comes to ownership. He's sub 18%. I know that for a fact. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. I'd have to check the spreadsheet. But yeah, I think part of it is people just can't, see somebody three-peating. He's a little bit overpriced, right? Because of the recent, the course history. The recent form isn't indicative of a $9,300 golfer. But yeah, he's going to be pretty low owned, and I couldn't blame you for playing him. You mentioned with whether you're playing no one below 8K in the PM, pretty much. I believe, there might be like 1-2 guys I'm playing below there that are in the PM wave, but it's like 90% of the guys below there I'm playing on the AM wave. Did you set a min salary? I do set a min salary. It's usually like $49,000. There's no reason to leave more than $1,000 on the table. If your optimizer is doing so, it's probably because of your exposure limits, right? You have too strict of limits and you just can't build lineups that spend all of that salary. So yeah, I usually have a minimum of like 49 grand. I'll leave up to $1,000 in salary. Max ownership, it depends on the slate. If I'm taking a bunch of chalk, at times I'll set a limit to make sure that I'm not taking, essentially differentiating via salary, right? As opposed to doing it with ownership. So it depends. I'm not doing it this week. I will have a min salary though. For cash, am I using the same weather rules? For sure. Yeah, in cash, even more so. If you have a one-stroke advantage, that means even more so for a cash lineup. How much a day am I playing? 0%. Playing 0% Jason Day. Struce the truth. Luca-licious. Love it. Do you think Aaron will play well or it might be Baddeley? Like what you're doing there. Yeah, I think he's a decent course fit here. He's really cheap. No one's going to play his ass because he's not doing anything sexy, right? Let's find good old Bads on here. Good old Control F to save the day. I know you're in the field, Baddeley. There you are. $6,800. AM wave golfer, made a bunch of cuts to start the year. I believe it was like 15 straight at some point. It was getting outrageous there. But yeah, he's fallen off a little bit. I like his chances. He's a much more consistent player than the guys around him. He's consistently a better player than some of the guys even up to the middle of the 7K range. So yeah, good buy low spot for Aaron Baddeley. I think so. Thought you might say that. Yep. Wins props towards the end of the stream. Hey, JGA, you're not new here. You know the deal, man. It'll be at the end of the stream. Adam Hadman is paired with Sung Kang. Think that hurts Hadwin. I've got no idea. I've heard things about Sung Kang playing slow. I'm assuming that's what you're referring to. I hope he's a patient guy. That's what I can say. I hope it doesn't get in his head. Let's talk about a few pieces that are kind of sticking out to me. I told you guys we'd talk about Bazainhout. I have gotten so many questions about him this week. I've had so many people say that they think he's a really good play this week that I know he's going to be higher owned than what the ownership projections are saying. Everyone thinks that he's this like sneaky good play. And I get it. The shots gained look great. The modeling looks really good on him, especially like the course fit and stuff. When you take a look at that, I mean, he's a decent player, but we take him at hard golf courses. Like, to my understanding, this is like a grinder. Like, Bazainhout, really good short game. Not really known for lighting it up. Like, I'm still playing him this week, but I have a weird feeling that he's going to be like 20% owned. Like, literally that high. Like, I have him like projected at like 13, like 12, 13% right now. I have a feeling that I'm just going to be way, way wrong on that. Like, way lower than I should be. And like other sites have him in like the 10% range. They're even more moderate on his ownership than I am. So it'll be an interesting little test case if he does come in at like 20%. Yeah, just I told you so, I guess. We'll have to see on that. But yeah, I still like him this week. I'm playing him in about 30% of my lineups. So I'm kind of accounting for him to get to that steam. Let's say he's still only like 15% owned. Well, that's 2x the field right there. If he's 20% owned, well, then I'm 1.5x the field. And I'm just going to have to live with that. So that's kind of how I'm handling Bazane Hoot. A few other chalky pieces. Brandon Woo's going to be really chalky. Sam Stevens is going to be really chalky. Ben Griffin's getting a lot of late steam. Michael Kim, even though I like him, is also getting a lot of steam. Let's see. In the bottom end of the 7K range, I feel like ownership is spread out. A few notable ownership numbers, I guess, would be Harry Hall. He's getting some attention from people. And then in the 6K range, to my understanding, there's no like mega chalk. Everyone here is like sub 2%. You can take your guys, take the guys that fit the model that you're running for that week, and feel pretty comfortable about it. I mean, like even a Tano Goya, who I think is going to get some attention because of how cheap he is going to be like 4% owned at the very most. And that would be like the upper bound of his ownership. I believe I have him closer to actually 2% with this projection. Someone I want to point out here, though, is David Micheluzzi. This kid is really good. And I don't just mean like he's like, oh, he's like good for a 6K range golfer. This David Micheluzzi guy might be like a top 10 player in the world someday. And the reason I say that is he plays on the PGA Australian Tour, small tour, right? It's not, you don't got any world killers over there, right? But this guy finishes top 10 like every single week. He has 3 wins in the last few months. Anytime he's played on any other tours, Asian Tour nearly won the event, went over there. DP World Tour finishes in the top 10. Every time this guy plays, he finishes like in the top 10. And the last time we saw somebody, and this was on the Korn Ferry Tour, granted, right, that had that same kind of track record, it was Taylor Montgomery, right? Like Korn Ferry Tour was just like top 10 every single week, right? And coming into the PGA Tour, we knew the kid was going to be a stud. I know maybe the Korn Ferry Tour is stronger than the competitions he's facing. I think that's fair to say. But why not take a shot on him at $6,600? He's in the AM wave. I'm doing it. I'm taking that blind shot on him. And in terms of world ranking, he's way better, way better than everyone else in the 6K range. Like, I think in terms of world ranking, like he should be at least like top end of the 7K range because he's like number 202 in the world golf rankings. So, yeah, if you're looking for that outside the park kind of play this week, it's David Micheluzzi. I think he might get a little bit of ownership because I'm not the only person to point him out this week, but I think it's well warranted. I think he's really good. You're new, so you say cash lineup. What is a cash lineup? Oh, good. So cash lineup would be those 50-50 contests. So they do like double ups. They'll do head-to-heads where you win a little bit less than a double up against somebody. It's a contest where you're just trying to finish in the top 50%. So your strategy, you're more focused about projection than you are ownership. And if anything, you actually like having higher owned players. So it's just a different type of contest with a different type of strategy. Good question. Brant says, yo, Luke, you still liking Shank this week? I am. He's a good course fit. I liked him going into it, especially now that he's in the AM wave. I have him at 10.2%. So he's chalky. He's getting some ownership, but kind of like Michael Kim, there's like 1 or 2 chalky guys in the 7K range that I'm still playing. And it's those 2. I'll just tip my hand right now, right? I already talked about Michael Kim. Other one is Adam Shank. They're really good recent form. That's the reason why I'm making the excuse for them, right? Is they're playing really well. They're hitting the ball really well at this point. So I want to tail that, right? I want to ride those coattails. You know, if there's somebody chalky in this range that's not necessarily playing the best golf, well, then you probably want to run from them like the plague. And the only one I can really think of is like, actually, yeah, there's not that many. Like all this chocolate. If you wanted to play Dylan Wu and Eric Cole, I get it, right? I hate the fact that they're in the PM wave. That's what scared me off of them. But a lot of the chalk here in the 7K range, I guess I understand. They're all guys that are really striking the ball. Like Sam Stevens, ball striking has been immaculate. I mean, Brandon Wu, same thing, right? I don't like these guys because they're in the PM wave, but they're really hitting the ball well. I guess I understand why the masses are getting there. Any thoughts on adding thigh girth to my modeling data? Yeah, I think Harry Higgs would break the model then, right? He would be number 1 in that model. Lots of talk of AM wave and PM wave, but after 2 chili dogs, you're in the BM wave. I'll just leave it at that. Jake Fisher says, thoughts on Hideki? Shot really low in the final round last year. Yeah, I like him a lot, right? T3 finish. He's relatively low owned, so 14.9%. I mean, if you're not playing Scottie Scheffler, he's a really easy guy to add to your pool, right? Just play him in 30% of your lineups, get some leverage, and hope that he repeats last year's performance, because that would probably be enough at his price tag. So yeah, I really like him this year. He's a good course fit. So a few other things to note, just in terms of lineup construction, because I'm fading Scottie up top, I don't have to go into the 6K range all that often. So like I talked about David Niccoluzzi a little bit before. There's a few other guys in the 6K range, like an Augusto Nunez, who I kind of like this week, $6,700. I'm only using them when I need to. It's like if I'm taking two of these three guys, like I really like Tom Kim. You guys probably know I'm playing him. Like Hideki, if I do a Hideki Haddon lineup, right? Maybe I need to dive into that 6K range. It's really just hammering this 7K. I think there's a lot of high upside options you can get to here. A lot of low-owned options you can play. Like Mackenzie Hughes stands out. Like I know he hasn't played the best golf of late, but for that President's Cup team that's in Canada, right? He really wants to make that team. And I feel like every time we get into this situation, like after the fact, you feel so dumb for not playing the guy that has all the motivation in the world to go out there and smash. It's a weak field event. If anybody wants to kill it here, it's Mackenzie Hughes. That guy needs some top 5 finishes to get on to that President's Cup team. And he probably won't make it as like pure the points because he's been so bad. But if he plays well enough, right, he could get one of those captain's picks, which I'm not sure how many they do for the President's Cup, but given that he's Canadian, he's probably at the top of the list to get one of those picks. I don't know. It's pure speculation play, but he's like sub 1% out. Like no one's going to play a Mackenzie Hughes this week. So these are the kind of plays that I'm comfortable getting to. There's a bunch of high upside plays here that I'm just scattershotting. Pan Kazire comes to mind. Like he's an absolute madman, high upside player that's also in the AM wave. Nate Lashley comes to mind. MJ Daffy comes to mind. Like, no, I'm not going to give away my whole player pool here or anything. That's the type of lineup construction that I'm going after. I'm not having to take a bunch of 6K guys because I'm not taking the 12K golfer. And it works out rather nicely when you're going and building lineups. They look pretty solid at the end of it, right? You're not disgusted with yourself like you are at some points. Let's go through some lineup construction now. We're going to just talk through kind of my thought process when building some of these lineups. And we'll start with a cash lineup because it's just so much more different than a GPP build. So in cash, like I mentioned before, that's when you're playing 50% of the field. So our mindset here is much more about just median projection than it is about going for upside, right? Trying to leverage the field. So Scottie Scheffler is more than fine in these lineups. The issue with it is the salary, right? You're down to $7,600. So you might be better served taking a more balanced approach. So I would want to take all AM guys. So let's put Kuchar in there in our cash lineup. Let's go down to Seabez. I think he's a great play in cash because of all these cuts that he's been making. Let's see. Let's put Terrell Hatton. So he's going to be our expensive guy up top. We're going to go with Terrell Hatton, especially because of some of the recent form. And we still have $7,600, right? We took an 8K guy, a 9K guy, and Terrell Hatton, and we're at the same metric left remaining as just taking a Scottie Scheffler, right? That's how expensive that he is. So that's why in cash, I would go that direction. Let's add 2 more players in here. If you're playing cash, Ben Griffin, he's one of the better players in this field. And maybe up here, you take like an Adam Hadwin. I don't know. Take the guys that you have projected the highest in your projections. If you're using my projections, that's probably going to look something like this. Either way, though, you don't have to worry about ownership nearly as much, and you're just kind of plugging away at the best plays. What I tried to focus on there, of course, is all of those golfers were AM wave golfers, so I'm trying to bake in that edge. And then I was a little bit more balanced with my salary to try and make sure that I wasn't, top heavy with somebody like a Scottie Scheffler. Now, for GPPs, our mindset's a little bit different. And, that lineup we just made might have been a little bit chalky, right? There was, quite a few guys there with some ownership. And a large field GPP, right? Let's say like this contest, right? We're playing against 41,000 other entries. I'm really trying to think about, leveraging the field. So starting with a Hideki instead, it's a good way to do so, right? 14% owned. Our second man in, if we're really trying to get cute here, right? Maybe it's a Minwoo Lee, right? Who's going to be single digit owned. Maybe it's using an Aaron Wise, who's an AM wave golfer who's not getting much attention. There's good ways to differentiate yourself. I really like Adam Hadwin. So you can see in a large field GPP, I don't hate this starting with one guy up top, right? Whether it's like Hideki, a Han, or a Kim, and then peppering this 8K range. I really like some of the plays there. Let's see. If we start with the Han instead, right? We still have $7,500 remaining. That's going to be what a lot of my lineups look like. And frankly, when I'm building a single entry, let's see. Let's change this around a little bit for a single entry. Let's go ahead and spend up for, let's put Kuchar in this lineup. for the single entry. And now we have $7,200 remaining for our last 2 spots. Don't hate this whatsoever, right? It's real balanced, right? It's a 10, a 9, 2 8s, and then likely a 7 and a 6 to go out there and wrap off that lineup. But I don't know. The salary works off so much better when you're not using a Scottie Scheffler this week. And I know if you use him, right, you still have enough salary to get it done. Let's see. If you started with Scottie, and let's use just Kuchar just for the sake, of keeping it consistent there, down to $7,200 remaining. Like, it's doable. You can build lineups. It's just, I like some of these AK options. Like, I like Montgomery, especially after the Korn Ferry Tour stuff that I was made aware of. I'm trying to jam those guys into lineups. So that's the issue with me getting to a Scottie. Let's catch up on chat and then talk about some props and whatnot. Where are we at? He could withdraw. That's true. But I'm okay if he does. Might just happen. That's the thing with large field GPPs, right? Taking risk on players. If you're going to do so, you got to be comfortable with them withdrawing, right? Missing the cut, playing horribly, so on and so forth. I'm comfortable with it. If you're not, don't play him, right? Couldn't blame you. Do you have any thoughts with Kevin Tway? I think he's a good play. I don't want to talk about too much, Sheldon, because we got to keep his ownership low. But he's sub 1% right now. He's in the AM wave, and he has not played well over the last few months. That's for damn sure. But long-term, pretty decent play. Chris got Scott Stallings. Another play I don't want to talk about too much. Yeah, he's getting squeezed in terms of ownership too. And that makes me like him even more. Let's see. He's getting squeezed by Woo. He's getting squeezed by Will Gordon, Davis Riley. This formatting thing is driving me crazy, you guys. Yeah, he's got Will Gordon there right below him. Sam Stevens, even SH Kim, like Suh, Ben Griffin are all getting attention. And then there's Scott Stallings, who I've heard no one talk about this week. Interesting. Would it be a contrarian play to take all 6K golfers for 100 lineups? It would be, and you would also be lighting money on fire. So I would not recommend that whatsoever. Tanner says, thoughts on Haddon Scott for a cash start, or do you prefer Kuchar? I'm fine with that too. Yeah, I love Haddon for cash. I think he's between him and Hideki, I would say would be like my top 2 cash plays. Probably Haddon, just not to worry about the injury concerns. And Scott and Kuchar, probably Kuchar, right? Kuchar's been making a lot more cuts, right? He's been really good for the last 2 months. Scott was good the last time out. So I probably trust Kuchar a little bit more. Bramlett for cash or all AM? I would go all AM. I probably wouldn't play Joseph Bramlett there. All right, let's take a look at some props. And we have a little PSA to do first about prize picks. And if you don't want to hear me bitching about prize picks, then hey, you can peace out of here. That's cool. But last week, they decided to DNP hole 16 through 18 props on Sunday after, I believe, of the 10 they posted, 9 out of the 10 of them hit an over. And I posted there on Sunday on my Patreon that you should hammer the overs there because they were playing 1.2 over par, and that was in the morning wave. And by the time the PM wave was coming around, it was playing 2 strokes over par, hole 16 through 18. That's the Green Mile, if you guys saw for the Wells Fargo Championship. Either way, after almost all of them hit, I think it was at least 4 or 5 of the 9 had already hit at this point. Prize Picks DNPs them because it said ARD3 on it. So you can see on here, it says round 1, right? Well, almost for every round, this thing up here where it says all the current golf projections are for round 1, this is wrong 90% of the time. And they never have any issues with it, right? But furthermore, for rounds 2 and 3 last week at the event, for birdie or better matchups, it had the round on it and it was incorrect for both of those rounds. And they didn't, refund anything. They didn't DNP anything, right? And not only that, in the past, we have lots of proof on my Discord and even just on the Prize Picks Discord, open proof of this, of them getting notified about, mistakes on some of these projections, like it's saying round 3. For example, the fairways, sometimes it'll say 14 fairways when there's only 13 on site. Like if there's an extra par 3, that happens quite a lot on the PGA Tour. And people will just DM the lines makers, right? And they'll change it on the prop. Well, this time around, right, after 5 of those props had already hit, they DNP'd everything. It's pretty obvious, right, why they went out there and did that, because they knew they were going to get their asses handed to them. So at this point, guys, I'm just not playing on Prize Picks. I tried to post one prop today for my community. It was a Minwoo over 4.5, and it was Hadman under 69 strokes. They took them off the board first. They waited 2 hours, and then they posted them back at different metrics. So just, I don't know. You can't trust them, right? Because they have that rule where they say if anything's wrong, they can just automatically DNP it. Let's say it says there's 8:34 tee time. They actually hit their tee shot at 8:35. what's to say they don't just DNP all your props in the future when you're going to hit, right? And the really crazy effed up thing is here, and it says it in their like, let's find it. Let's actually find the clause. We got to find like the FAQ or whatever. And either way, well, I'll do this later. I'll post it on my Twitter or something like that. It says in their rules that they can handle those mistakes on a case-by-case basis. So the reason why I wouldn't play on Prize Picks anymore if I were you guys out there is on a case-by-case basis, they can decide when to DNP props, right? If there's any sort of mistake. So that means if the tip-off time of an NBA game is off by a minute, right? 30 seconds, something like that, they can DNP props by that standard. That's at least what I'm getting from it, right? I mean, they did it to us on the golf side, right? What's to say they don't do that for NBA, baseball going forward, so on and so forth? It's a slippery slope that I would want to avoid. So I'll just say that much. Instead, I'm playing on No House Advantage, which posts the same props as Prize Picks at higher payouts, and they bumped a few props. I took the Minwoo over, 4.5 birdies, but I can deal with bumps. Like, bumps are a part of being in a sports book, right? Getting DNP'd props that are just going to hit for thousands of dollars against them is not something that sports books should be doing, right? It's a legal activity. So I would focus over here on the No House Advantage side of things. In terms of props you can take, I like this Matt Kuchar over, and he's at a 5 and Underdog. I believe he's at 5 on Prize Picks as well. And then I like the Adam Hadwin under, right? So I took him at under 69 on Prize Picks. Of course, they bumped that, right? It's bump picks. Shouldn't be surprised at that point, but you could take these two. And the real X factor is that you get 3.2X, right? If one of them were to push, let's say he got 69, you get your money back for Kuchar. That's kind of disappointing, but that's, I guess, the one main difference is you get a refund for getting one hit, one push. But the payouts are great, right? 6X for getting a 3X power. You can insure bets. So if you go up to a 4, you can insure it down to the next payout structure. And then obviously, if you get 2 right, you get 3.2X. I love the way that they handle it over here at No House Advantage. So I hear that they limit you pretty quickly. So people have told me to expect to get limited pretty soon by them. But until then, right, I'm going to ride these props, right? I'd much rather play on this site, at least, not having to worry about them just pulling the rug out of you and DNPing props when you're going to sweep on them. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm actually going to do a whole video on that, exposing them. I have so much proof of them just changing the times in the past, them not DNPing props when they have mistakes on them. And quite conveniently, right? It's usually when a lot of props were losing that they weren't DNPing them. There's going to be a whole thing on that, but we'll put that aside. If you're an underdog, a lot of the value has been bumped. Of the stuff that's left there, I like this over on somebody like an Aaron Wise. Almost all of the birdie props got bumped up 0.5. I guess this under on Hideki I still like too. Everything else has been bumped. I had Scottie at 68 strokes. The entire strokes board got at least bumped 0.5 strokes. A lot of them bumped by an entire stroke. And it's because this course is now a par 71, right? And you may go, oh, well, if the average was 2.78 under, right, and they're making a par 71, scoring average is going to be 1.75 under. Incorrect, right? They took 60 yards off of hole 12. That's the hole that they changed. That's probably going to give you another half stroke off your average. So let's say it's a half a stroke difference, right? They're still going to shoot like 2.2 under par on average. These are much better than average players. You do that kind of math and you realize there's a lot of unders to be taken on strokes. I mean, even at these bumped lines, you'd probably still want to take unders. Now, I got much better numbers, so I'm not going to force those in. But based on what hasn't been bumped yet, it's these two props. They're both also AM wave golfers, which helps their cases. I know Aaron Wise is coming off the injury. I'm going to call it an injury, I guess, but the mental health break. Hopefully he's got his shit together. Who knows? But Hideki Matsuyama, 68.5 strokes. I still love that prop. I took it at 68.5. It's actually the only prop I took that hasn't been bumped. So, yeah, we're not even going to talk about Prize Picks props. I'm not going to give you guys anything for it because I feel like you should be avoiding it at all costs. It truly is a scam at this point. I have to say that. Let's catch up on chat, see if there's any prop questions going on. Where are we at? Patrick Reed been low owned recently. Yeah, you mean for PGA stuff? Yeah, because people hate them. Your top PGA plays are Hatton under 68 strokes. You might want to take down an Underdog then. Actually, did they bump that one down already? I feel like they may have. Yeah, they did, didn't they? Yeah. All right. Yeah, I guess that. Actually, no, he's at 68.5 here, man. If you're going to take it over there in Underdog. right? Take that 0.5 strokes. That's huge for your hit right there. But yeah, I completely agree with you. I would be taking the under. You got McNeely at 68.5, Montgomery over birdie or better matchup. Now, let's take a look at that last one. But yeah, the McNeely one, as long as he has an AM tee time, I'm okay with it. Let's double check on you there. He's at 69 strokes now, so there's a little bit better value for there if you want to take a look at that prop. But he's a PM wave tee time. I would wait. Here's what I would do. If I were you, I would wait until tomorrow morning, see how the conditions are playing before you fire on a McNeely. If it looks really easy, hammer the under, right? But if it's starting a little bit more difficult than we expect early, then you might want to avoid that. That would be my word of advice. And then you're saying the Montgomery matchup versus Riley. Two heavy hitters there. Montgomery, who's won here before. I like his chances this week. And then you've got Davis Riley. That's a tough one. You say Montgomery's 6 in birdie or better. Yeah, Riley's up there in birdies too. In fact, let's go ahead and just do a little search on it. I think Davis Riley's got to be like top 30 on tour. Let's not even just guess. Let's just look it up. All righty. Cool. Share my screen. We got the birdie or better averages up already. Gotta love the PGA Tour site. They make it so easy for us. So you can see John Rahm's number 1. So let's see. Montgomery's number 6. So he's going to have the lead. 104. Yeah, hammered, I guess. I know last year he was top 20 on the PGA Tour in birdie or better average. So I don't think he's going to stay around number 104. But based on this season, right? I mean, you'd be crazy not to take Taylor Montgomery. So yeah, I guess if I was playing on Prize Picks, I would take that prop. But yeah, not something I'm doing right now. I'm gonna stick to my guns on that one. And I guess just to talk about more about No House Advantage. You know, they do have greens in regulation and fairway props. So it's going to make it really easy for us to just kind of focus on that because the board was exactly the same as Prize Picks earlier. And then they have almost all the same categories, right? No matchups, which, you know, I guess if you want to play matchups, you can do so with the rivals over here on Underdog, which they have some up here I did like. I guess I'll point these out. I saw these earlier. The Michael Kim one. Because there was a couple of real big discrepancies to be had here. And I'm trying to find, there was one more. Nah, it might have just been those two. But yeah, like this Michael Kim matchup, this Brandon Wu matchup, like I liked quite a bit. Like, I don't know. The whole point here is like everything that Prize Picks does, we can replace with these other apps. And I plan on doing so because of how they've treated us as customers. So for my content, for videos going forward on Patreon, all that sort of fun stuff, you're going to see me focusing on these other sites. The stuff that I'm posting for No House Advantage, right? They pretty much copy and pasted the board. You could go over there and play them on Prize Picks, right? So if you're still going to play on there, you can still use my content, but just know that I won't be myself. I won't be indulging on that side. Let's see. I had McNeely over 68.5. Gotcha. And that makes sense. Then why he went to 69, right? It was a sharp play. I have to say, right, like the wins last year, round 1 were nasty for Thursday. And the scoring average was still like 2.5 under par. It wasn't the 3 under par that you saw for pretty much the last 3 days, but it was still 2.5 under par, right? And right, 2.5 under par is a 68.5, pretty much right on that projection. I don't know. It's a little dicey. The over is a little dicey in my opinion, I have to say. Even at 68.5, like this course is so easy that like it's hard for me to want to take fades. If I was going to take fades, it's worth noting this. It would be for greens and regulation because they did make one of the par 5s a par 4, and it's like a 480-yard par 4. So the green and regulation percentage is going to drop quite significantly on that hole. And the average last year was 13 greens. So like you've got to think if there's anyone that's a below average iron player on the board here, that you'd have to be leaning on their under. And one that I saw early on was Montgomery. He was at 13 greens. He obviously got bumped down to 12.5, right? So other people saw what I saw there, but you could use that same argument for Bazane, right? He's not the best green and regulation player, right? So if you wanted to take an under, I guess that makes sense. But ideally, you want a PM wave tee time, right? That's what made this fade on Montgomery so good. Honestly, McNeely, I think I would rather fade him over here than I would for Strokes. If I'm going to be honest with you, JGA, because he's a PM wave tee time, right? That impacts both strokes and greens, but he's also not the most accurate iron player. He's usually a loser to the field when it comes to his shots gained approach. And everyone else in this range is like a significant gainer when it comes to their approach play. So I guess I'll throw that one out there. If you're looking for a fade, you could take that. Some of these fairway props weren't horrible either. They had Benny Ann at 9 fairways. I would have been on that under, but now it's at 8.5. Honestly, I still don't hate it at 8.5. But I mean, I almost would rather go with Aaron Wise at 9 for an under. He's non-accurate driver, right? He hasn't been playing on tour for quite some time, so it's safe to say that he's probably going to be rusty. Yeah, on Prize Picks, I actually don't hate some of those fades, but once again, I won't be indulging. I'm holding up the boycott that I talked about before. This saggy guy is getting the bandstand. He's spewing BS out there. Who knows? He got his attention for his 2 seconds. But all right, guys, that's all I've got for this live stream. We'll go ahead and cut it off there. We are going to be doing Showdown live streams this weekend. I know last weekend I said I was going to do it. Then I had technical issues on my end. So this time we're actually going to have those Showdown streams to get warmed up there for the major championship. We'll 100% be doing them for the PGA as well. So let's, get the nerves out of the way. Let's get the rust kicked off here for this weekend for Showdown and get ready to rock and roll on that end. So I'm looking forward to it. I'll see you guys for the weekend with that content. And of course on Patreon with our Showdown projections, our prop analysis for rounds 2 through 4. Let's try and make it a memorable weekend. Best of luck in those GPPs. It's worth noting, in terms of an outright card, I went with all 4 of my core plays. So it did end up betting a Siwoo, Taylor Montgomery, obviously went with Trahan, but I did add a few names as well. I added Hideki right before the board changed because of the Spieth withdrawal. I added a Will Gordon, which I kind of don't like at this point because, he is in the PM wave now. And I did bet Adam Schenk, which is kind of out of right field. But especially after I saw his AM wave tee time, I don't know, took a few dollars and sprinkled it on him. But yeah, hopefully we hit one of those outrights, take home a GBP. Wouldn't be a horrible way to start major championship season. Best of luck with those lineups, and I'll catch you guys for the Showdown streams.